Hi and welcome to Tabletop Mini Showcase. I'm Jim, and in this video I'm going to be giving you 15 hobby tips that you've probably never heard before. Let's get to it. Alright, so for hobby tip number one, I want to talk about paint shakers. A lot of people will spend an awful lot of money on things like the Vortex shaker, which isn't actually designed to shake paint. It's a scientific instrument designed for use in a laboratory. So in terms of paint shakers, it's sort of overkill. Personally, I think that rather than shelling out 60 to 70 pound for a Vortex shaker, you're better off just buying one of these things, a back massager. I swear, it's for massaging your back. These things retail for around £20 and they basically do the same thing as what a Vortex shaker does. They vibrate at a high frequency and they have more than enough power to shake your paint significantly enough to mix it. I myself have my back massager attached to my desk using just a couple of straps that I made from an old belt. You can obviously just hold the shaker in your hand and it will work exactly the same way. I just have it mounted there for convenience. Now, one of the other benefits of using this as opposed to a Vortex shaker is after a hard day's hobbying, you can always give your back a bit of a massage. Ah yeah, that's the spot. Ah yeah, right there. Woo, loving it. Hobby tip number two is wrist support, but not just any old wrist support. You see, most people will use the edge of their desks to support their wrists, but the issue with this is that sitting with your hands on the edge of the desk isn't comfortable. Firstly, the edge of the desk is pointy and you're gonna have your wrists leant on an edge that's quite sharp for quite a long period of time. Obviously, this isn't going to be very comfortable. Secondly, the position of your shoulders when you're sat with your arms like that in front of you is very tight in. You can't really relax when you've got your arms in front of you like that. So what I developed is a wrist support system that's based around a mukyeong or wooden dummy from the Wing Chun martial art. I did this because I study Wing Chun Kung Fu, and one of the chief factors of Wing Chun is relaxation. Now, if there's one thing that we can bring from the martial art into the hobbying sphere, it's that idea of being relaxed. If you are sat relaxed when you are painting, you're going to paint for a longer period of time. You're going to feel more comfortable while you are painting. The wrist support system that I have created is simply a thick wooden pole at a 45-degree angle covered with foam for added comfort. By using this system, you can rest your arm onto the pole comfortably, having full freedom to move your body around the sides of the pole, which allows your shoulders to open up and creates a much more comfortable base for you to paint from. With the pole being round and having no sharp edges, it doesn't cause any kind of pain on your wrist the way that a sharp edge of a desk would. And due to the 45-degree angle, you can actually sit the paint holder onto the pole and have your other hand supported further back rather than having to have both of your wrists placed next to each other, which creates an awkward position when it comes to trying to get to all the various angles of the model. Also, with the pole being round, you can clamp that model to that pole however you like. Your hands can hold around the edge of the pole, holding the mini to the edge of it whilst you paint it. You can hold it on top of the wrist mount. You can alter the angle of the mini very easily and still be able to support your other wrist with the pole because of the angle at which it is mounted. Painting like this has been an absolute game changer for me. The level of comfort that it brings is really quite surprising. Honestly, you really have to try it to experience it and understand how beneficial this system really is. Having created this and started painting like this, I would not want to go back to painting on the edge of a desk. It is a pretty simple alteration to make to your painting area, and I genuinely believe that you will find it beneficial. Tip number three is pegs. Simple wooden household pegs, the type of pegs you use to hang your laundry out. Now, these things are insanely useful. I glue them all over the place in my workshop. Need a place to hold your minis after you've painted them? There's a peg for that. Need a place to put your paintbrushes so that you can easily access them when you're painting? There's a peg for that. Need a place to put your micro drill so that you can access it at any point during your painting session? There's a peg for that. V-Bags! They're fucking brilliant! Hobby tip number 4 is a Fresnel screen. Now you can pick these up for around £3 or £4 off of eBay, and they are basically a flexible magnifying screen that you can use to magnify your miniatures rather than a magnifying headset. Now I have tried many of these different magnifying headsets, and generally speaking, they're cumbersome, pretty uncomfortable, and they make it difficult for you to see where your paint palette is and what paints you are putting on it. Essentially, when you're using a magnifying headset, you will find that everything is magnified all at the same time, not just the area that you're painting. Now, this really isn't very convenient because quite often you're going to need to get new paints and put them onto your palette, and having a faff about taking headsets off or flipping up little visors can be a bit of a pain in the ass. As you can see here, I personally have my Fresnel screen mounted to my hobby lamp with a peg, and this way I'm able to put the Fresnel screen on when I need it, take it off when I don't need it, and it just creates a much easier way for me to magnify my minis and do all them fine details without having to worry about having some uncomfortable headset mounted to my head. Hobby tip number 5 is paintbrush length. Now, personally, I like to cut my paintbrushes really short. The reason why I do this is twofold. Reason number 1 is if you are using a Fresnel screen, you want to be able to get your paintbrush behind that screen and not have it repeatedly bang into the screen. There's really no point in using a magnifying screen if you have to hold the mini and the paintbrush 7 or 8 inches behind the screen. It's just going to look the same size as it did without magnification if you do that. Personally, I find that I don't need my paintbrush to have a really long tail on it. This is fine. This works for me. I'm happy using a paintbrush like this. It in no way hinders the way that I paint, and I find that it does make life easier for me. The second reason why I like to keep my paintbrush short like this is how many of us are guilty of leaving our paintbrushes in our water pot. You put your paintbrush in to clean it and you just forget about it. You leave it sat there, and before you know it, you've got a paintbrush where the end is bent like that, which makes them pretty much unusable from then on. When your paintbrush is this short, you do not have the option to leave it in your water pot. If you let go of that paintbrush into your water pot, it's gone, and you're going to have to empty the water out before you can get your paintbrush back. So having it this short really takes away the temptation to build a bad habit like that, and you will actually find that your paintbrushes last longer because you are not leaving them just sat in water pots, ruining the ends of them. Hobby tip number 6, paintbrush grips. As you get older, arthritis and age generally can make your hands a little bit more limited in mobility, and for many of us painters, gripping the tiny little ends of a paintbrush can be pretty awkward. So I personally like to use paintbrush grips. They improve the range of movement that you can get from your paintbrush without having to have your fingers really clamped down in a small space. By having the ball grip, you are actually able to move the paintbrush around with less effort and requiring less fine motor skills. These are particularly good if you do suffer from any kind of disability that may make holding small items difficult, and they can really improve the quality of your paint jobs. They can be applied to a number of different brushes, and once your paintbrush is worn out, you can remove them and put them on your next one. I will warn you that when you remove them, sometimes they'll pull the metal bit off of the paintbrush, so I wouldn't go taking them off of one brush and putting them on another just willy-nilly, as you can damage your paintbrushes with them. But if you're putting them on to use and you're leaving them on, they are great. They will do what you want them to do, and as soon as your brush is worn out, you just pull it off, put it on the next one. Hobby tip number 7 is store your minis high up from where you are painting. If you have your minis on the same level as all your paints and your water pot, the chances of you knocking a paint pot over or knocking your water pot over and those paints and water going all over your freshly painted minis is so much higher. And who amongst us hasn't ever accidentally knocked over a pot of Agrax Earthshade or Nuln Oil? It is heartbreaking to have a mini that you have painted and spent hours working on just ruined within seconds due to a little accident accident that could easily have been avoided. What I personally like to do is I have my minis stored in a small box above my airbrush booth, which is where I paint. You could do the same thing by having a little shelf above your painting area that you can just reach on up to and place your minis at when you're done painting each one. It might sound like a simple tip, but it's a really useful one, because knocking over paint and ruining your minis is just heartbreaking, and it's something that can be avoided so easily. Put them minis up high, out of the way. Hobby tip number 8. This hobby tip kind of goes hand in hand with the last one, and it's how to simply make an anti-spill paint pot holder. How many of us have seen these anti-spill paint pot holder things online and thought, oh, that looks like a good idea, I should probably pick one of those up, and then never gotten around to doing it? Well, all you need to do to make one of these anti-spill containers is use a little bit of cardboard from a cereal packet. Just take one long strip of the cardboard, wrap it around your paint pot to get the right length, and cut it so that it fits around your paint pot. Obviously leave a little bit of an overlap so that you can glue it together. On the bottom of this strip, cut lots of little cuts so that you can fold over the cardboard in order to glue it down to a base. Next, cut a circle of the cardboard and glue this cardboard strip to the circle, and that's it. It is really as simple as that. Now you have got an anti-spill base that you have made in next to no time for next to no cost. Why you would need to go out and purchase one of these when you can make one as simply and as cheaply as that, I don't know. To be honest, it would probably take you the same amount of time to make one of these things as it would to go online and buy one, so save yourself the money. Hobby tip number 9 is scalpel storage. Now, scalpels are one of those things that we do use quite often in this hobby. If I'm trying to remove a mold line, I'm using a scalpel. If I want to cut a little bit of random plastic off one of my minis, I'm using a scalpel. If I'm converting my models, I'm probably using a scalpel. It's a tool that I use quite often, and having access to it quickly and safely is something that I want in my hobby area, and I guess you do too. How I do this is I use a little piece of EVA foam mounted to my desk where I can literally stab my scalpel into it so that it is stood upright and I can see where it is and it's safely stored. That way, when I want it, I can grab it. When I want to put it back, I just stab it into the foam. Leaving your scalpel just resting on a desk can lead to injury. You can accidentally catch it with your hand and end up with a scalpel stabbed into your hand. It can roll off the desk and stab you in the leg. Miniac will tell you a horrible story about that happening to him at a Games Workshop store, and I personally would not want to go through what he went through as a result of leaving a scalpel just lying on a desk somewhere. You may think, well, why not just put it in a little holder somewhere? It's basically the same thing. And the problem with that is when you have a little cup holder thing on your desk, it's so tempting to just keep filling it up with crap. And before you know it, you've got a whole bunch of stuff in there that you've got to search through before you get to the thing that you want to use. Having specific areas that are just dedicated to one item makes it a lot easier for you to access that item, and it removes the temptation to clutter that area with other random hobby junk. Hobby tip number 10 is paint pens. Paint pens are surprisingly useful in this hobby. If you need to do a black base rim, having a 5M Posca paint pen with a felt tip is really useful. You can draw around that rim in a lot less time than it would take you to paint around it. The paint also dries incredibly matte, and it has a sort of self-leveling quality due to the paint pens being designed to be used for purposes such as customization and graffiti. One of the other benefits of doing this is you can literally paint up an entire squad of minis at your desk, and then when you're done, sit in front of the telly with your missus and just draw around them base rims. It gives you a little bit more time with the family, and that's got to be a good thing. Another area that you can use these paint pens is on the more recent Horus Heresy minis that have been released. On the shoulder pads you will find that they have these little bumps all over them. Now, what you can do is you can sit with a paint pen in your living room and just colour them in like you would with a colouring book. Again, you could sit at your desk and paint these and be sat in solitude painting a bunch of tiny little dots, or you could be sat in the living room with your family just colouring them in easily. They're not particularly high detailed little areas that you've got to concentrate on. They are just repetitive little dots that have to be placed on the shoulder pads, and you can do that with a paint pen. Hobby tip number 11 is keep your basing materials close to hand. I personally keep my basing materials mounted to my ceiling. I do this by just using plastic cups with a small amount of basing material in each of the cups, with a piece of cardboard wrapped around them that I have glued to the ceiling. You could just as easily place various plastic cups around your desk with a little bit of basing material in each one. That way you're not having to go to a drawer every time that you want to get out your basing material. Having a whole bunch of materials in big containers on shelves behind you may look great in videos, but in terms of practicality, it really isn't going to help your basing. Having lots of little storage containers around your area with small amounts of basing material is going to free up your access to those materials and make you far more likely to experiment with a whole combination of these materials than what you would if you have to keep walking off and getting new materials from big containers stored in various places around your hobby area. Again, it's a simple tip, but it's very much a neglected tip. This is something that a lot of people just don't think about, and it will make a big difference to the quality of the basing that you do. And bases are just as important as the minis themselves. Hobby tip number 12, get a cup holder for your water pot. You can have your water pot on the desk, but each time that you go to wash your brush, you're having to lift your arm up way higher than you need to, and it's a waste of energy. Not only that, you can risk knocking that water pot over and up all your minis by simply buying a £3 or £4 cup holder off of eBay or Etsy or wherever. You can mount your cup to the side of your desk and have it securely stored somewhere low down where you can clean your brushes easily. It's a simple thing, but again, it will make a difference to how you paint and the ease of which you can paint in the area that you're painting. Anytime you can reduce the amount of potential accidents in your work area, it's a good thing, and you should concentrate on doing that, because little mistakes add up, and over time you can find yourself getting frustrated and irritated by things that just don't need to be a problem. My water pot is stored in a cup holder on my chair. I bought a chair with a cup holder and instantly realised that would be perfect for a place to put my water pot. I'm not saying that you have to buy a chair that's got a cup holder built into it, but what I am saying is if you've got the option to do that, it's a great option. Hobby tip number 13 is paint handles. Now, I make my paint handles from old dropper bottles that have run out of paint. As you can see here, all I have done is cut the top off of the dropper bottle, fill it with a bunch of sand or mortar or cement, and then rammed a wooden dowel down into it and glued it in place. You can also put a little bit of grip tape around it to improve the grip of the handle, and you'll find making handles like this is actually kind of useful. The weight of the sand will stop the handle from being top heavy. The wooden dowel will allow you to apply double-sided tape to the top that will very securely hold your mini in place, and you will also have the option to drill in to the wooden pole and attach various little bits and pieces that also need painting with paper clips or pins. This will allow you to paint a variety of different things, airbrush a bunch of things all at one time, and it's a cheap and resourceful way to make paint handles. Recycling's cool. Hobby tip number 14 is wrist pads. In my airbrush booth, I have two little EVA foam padded areas that I have created to support my wrists when I'm airbrushing. If I'm spending a long period of time base coating a whole bunch of minis, I don't want to have my wrists resting on a pointy edge of a desk. It's not comfortable, it's not fun, it doesn't need to be that way. All you need is a little bit of EVA foam and you can create these really nice little foam padded areas that will cushion your wrists and make painting a lot more comfortable. You're gonna want to paint for longer, you're gonna have more fun painting if you are not hurting yourself leaning on a sharp edge. And finally, hobby tip number 15 is chair pockets. Now we all sit on a variety of different chairs, and so the type of chair pockets that you get can vary significantly. But if, like me and a lot of people, you bought a gaming chair, which isn't the best chair for painting in, you will have arms on your chair that you can attach pockets to. Having pockets on the side of your chair where you can store all these various little bits and pieces that we use throughout the hobby: snippers, paint pens, pliers, emery boards, all the little bits and pieces that you would normally have strewn across your desk, just sat in pockets on the side of your chair, is really convenient. Okay, so I hope those 15 hobby tips have been helpful. I hope you found something that you can put into practice into your hobbying area that will improve the overall comfort level at which you paint and just improve productivity all around. If you have enjoyed this video and seen something new that you hadn't thought about before, let me know down in the comments, and let me know if this is the type of video that you like to see so that I will know to continue making videos like this in the future. Don't forget to hit the like, share and subscribe button, as it really does help the channel grow and it puts a little smile on this boy's face. Also, hit the little notification bell if you don't want to miss out on any of my upcoming videos. Thanks for watching, guys. Action!